Have you ever had that specific sinking feeling at work where you realize the code base you're working on is just rotting?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean legacy code written by some guy named Dave 10 years ago
Yeah.
who didn't believe in comments.
Yeah, no.
I mean, decisions you and your team made last month.
Yeah.
You're in a meeting arguing about why a database schema was changed, and 3 different people have 3 different memories of what happened.
And the documentation is no help.
The documentation is a lie.
It's the digital decay. It is a very real, very pervasive feeling.
Exactly. Digital decay. It feels like we're building skyscrapers on quicksand. Data drifts, truth becomes subjective, and we spend half our time just trying to figure out what's actually happening in our own systems.
It is the defining frustration of modern engineering. And we usually blame it on bad habits. We move fast and break things, culture, or lazy documentation, or just, complexity.
Sure.
But the document we're looking at today argues that the problem isn't cultural, it's ontological.
Ontological. Okay, we are starting off with the heavy hitters today. I love it.
We have to. We are doing a deep dive into a manifesto released just recently, January 19th, 2026, by a company called Roxy Systems.
Oh.
It's titled The Substrate, Physics of Coherent Infrastructure. And honestly, calling it a technical white paper feels like a massive undersell.
It really does.
It reads like a collision between a high-level DevOps manual and a treatise on, quantum mechanics.
I had that exact thought. I read through this, and my first reaction was, wait, are they talking about servers or the fabric of space-time?
Right.
But let's set the stage. Their central premise is that we're facing a trust crisis in software.
But they aren't talking about phishing or hackers.
No. They mean we can't trust the infrastructure itself.
Correct. They come out swinging. They claim that most compliance in our industry is theater and that audit trails are fiction.
That is a bold accusation to make in an industry that spends billions of dollars on compliance tools.
It is bold, but when you read their reasoning, it kind of clicks. They say our current systems are built on entropy and forgetting.
Explain that. What does forgetting mean here?
Well, think about how we actually build systems. We rely on fluidity. If I delete a row in a database, it's gone.
Right.
If I overwrite a file, the old version creates a ghost, but the system treats the new version as the only truth.
We rely on eventual consistency.
Exactly. I see one version of the data, you might see another for a few seconds, and we just hope it all syncs up eventually.
Right. Eventual consistency. The idea that if we just wait long enough, the truth will settle.
And Roxy argues that in that gap between the action and the consistency, that's where trust breaks down. That's where the rot sets in. Decisions fragment, and nobody knows when the alignment broke. Their counter-proposal is this really radical concept. Observation creates reality.
Which is a direct lift from quantum physics, the observer effect.
Precisely. In quantum mechanics, a system exists in all these potential states until it's measured. The measurement collapses the wave function into a single reality. Roxy is applying that directly to code. They say an infrastructure is just a void, it's nothing, until a sovereign agent makes a decision.
A sovereign agent. That sounds very regal, but that could be me, a developer, or it could be a bot.
Right. Any entity capable of making a change. And when that agent acts, when they commit code or change a permission setting, they are collapsing potential into reality. They call this the slice.
The slice. Okay, this seems to be the fundamental atom of their entire universe.
It is. The slice is the moment of actualization. It is the specific point where intent becomes reality. And here is the rule that changes everything.
Okay.
In the substrate, a slice cannot be unmade.
This is the part that I think will trip people up. We're so conditioned to the Ctrl-Z lifestyle. If I make a typo, I backspace. If I push a bad commit, I revert. To us, the mistake is gone. It never happened.
But is it? In Roxy's view, undoing is a comfortable fiction we tell ourselves. You didn't actually erase the past.
You just performed a new action that masked the old one.
Exactly. In the substrate, they force you to acknowledge the timeline. If you make a mistake, you can't hit undo. You have to create a new slice that reverses the effect of the previous one.
It sounds like a semantic difference, but the implications are massive.
It's huge. It means the record of the mistake, the original slice, remains forever. It's an irreversible mark on the timeline.
There's no rewriting history to make yourself look better.
None.
So if I break production, that action is cryptographically sealed in the history of the universe. Forever.
Forever.
That sounds incredibly high pressure. I feel like my blood pressure just went up thinking about it.
You would think so, but hold that thought, because later on, we'll discuss why they claim this actually makes engineers less afraid to break things. It's a paradox, but a fascinating one.
Okay, I'm skeptical, but I'll bookmark that.
Yeah.
Let's move from the philosophy to the physics. Because Roxy isn't just speaking metaphorically here.
Not at all.
They lay out some extremely specific, hard constraints for how this substrate operates. They call it the physics of lawful becoming.
I love that phrase, lawful becoming. It implies that if you don't follow these rules, your data isn't just buggy, it's essentially illegal.
It doesn't have the right to exist in the system.
Right.
And there are two specific numbers that govern this law. 35 milliseconds and 50 milliseconds. Let's start with the 35 meters. They call this the refresh rate of identity coherence. What does that actually mean for a developer sitting at a keyboard?
Think of it like a frame rate in a video game, but for your digital identity. This document argues that a sovereign agent, the thing making changes, can only transform its state so fast.
Okay.
If you try to change your identity or your permissions faster than once every 35 milliseconds, the system can't keep up with who you are.
So you're moving faster than the speed of light, essentially.
In their universe, yes. If you exceed that speed limit, the agent fragments.
They fragment.
It means there are multiple incompatible versions of you trying to act on the system simultaneously.
And since the system demands total order, it rejects the action.
It has to. And they are very clear on this. It's not a hardware bottleneck. They aren't saying our servers are too slow.
No, it's a rule of the universe.
It's a rule. They're saying 35 meters is the speed of lawful becoming. It's a constraint imposed to ensure that cause always precedes effect. If you go faster, you break causality.
That is wild. It's like a speed limit for existence. And then we have the 50 meters finality rule. This seems to be the one that would keep network engineers up at night.
Oh, absolutely. This is the hard stop. Roxy dictates that every slice, every single decision must be finalized, sealed, and synchronized to the cloud within 50 milliseconds.
And if the network lags, if a packet gets dropped and it takes 51 milliseconds, it just drops. Doesn't queue up to try again in a second.
It drops. The transaction is void. This is a massive departure from how, 99% of the web works today.
Yeah, we hide latency. We use loading spinners. We use optimistic UI updates where the app shows you success before the server actually confirms it.
Exactly. Roxy says, no, you cannot lie to the user about time.
So it's binary. Either it happens instantly and correctly or it doesn't happen at all.
Correct. They call this correct by construction. The alternative, what we do now, is correct by cleanup.
Right, where we let things get messy and then run scripts later to fix the data.
Yep. Roxy uses an automation suite called Cosmos to enforce this. If Cosmos can't verify the truth in 50 ms, the truth doesn't get written.
It's incredibly disciplined. It forces you to treat the network as a hostile environment that you have to conquer every single time you click a button.
It forces you to stop pretending the network is infinite and instant. It brings physics back into code. It sounds restrictive, but the argument is that this constraint creates a foundation that is rock solid.
Speaking of foundations, let's talk about the structure that sits on top of this physics. They call it the 8 primitives. The manifesto lists these 8 concepts that they claim aren't just features, but mathematical necessities.
Right. They aren't saying, here are 8 cool tools we built. They are saying, if you want a coherent reality, you must have these 8 things.
It reads almost like a fantasy novel's magic system. You've got proofs, notary, canon, witness, continuum.
Harmonics, accord, and ChronoLedger. It does have that epic feel, but the engineering logic is sound.
So let's take one. What's canon?
Canon ensures that causality flows in one direction. It prevents the grandfather paradox in your database. You can't have an effect that happens before its cause.
Which happens surprisingly often in distributed systems today.
Constantly. And then there's witness. This is the idea that observation requires registration.
Okay.
You can't just look at data without the system knowing you looked. In our current world, reading data is often invisible.
But in the substrate, looking at the data is an event that gets recorded.
It's a slice. That's huge for security. If a bad actor queries the database, that query is sealed. And harmonics and accord, they deal with how different parts of the system agree on the truth. If you don't have these primitives, Roxy argues that your infrastructure is just noise. It's incoherent.
Just electrons moving around without meaning?
Yeah.
So how do they actually build this? We have the philosophy, we have the physics, we have the primitives. What does the tech stack actually look like?
At the core is the ChronoLedger, also referred to as CMOS. This is the immutable record we talked about. It uses a Merkle chain, which listeners might know from blockchain tech, to ensure tamper-proof integrity.
Meaning if you try to go back and change a log entry from last week, the cryptographic hash of the entire chain changes, and everyone knows you're lying.
Exactly. It's a book that cannot be rewritten. But the piece that really makes this work at scale is something they call the atomic sealer.
The atomic sealer, that sounds like a sci-fi weapon.
It kind of is. It's the mechanism that assigns a globally unique ID to every single event. And when they say unique, they mean it.
Globally unique.
No two events across all machines, across all time, can ever have the same ID.
That guarantees a total ordering of reality. You never have to guess, did the payment go through before or after the inventory update?
Exactly. The IDs tell you the absolute truth. And to visualize all of this, they have a tool called Gpulse.
I noted Gpulse because they specifically say, this is not archiving. This is not logging.
That's a critical distinction. Logging is usually forensic. It's what you look at after the body is found.
Right.
You dig through logs to see why the server crashed 3 hours ago. Gpulse is described as the present moment state of reality.
Okay.
Because of that 50 meters finality rule, Gpulse shows you the live heartbeat of the system. You can see which machines are coherent and which are drifting in real time.
It's a heartbeat monitor, not an autopsy report.
That is the perfect analogy. And because the latency is so low, you are seeing the system as it actually is, not as it was 5 minutes ago.
Okay, so we have this rigorous, slightly terrifying system of absolute truth. Now we have to ask the big question. So what?
Yeah, why do this?
Why should a team adopt the substrate? Why take on these constraints? Because let's be honest, engineers hate constraints.
They do, but they hate broken pagers more. The manifesto outlines 4 major impacts, and they address the exact pain points we talked about at the beginning.
So the first one is for teams themselves.
Right. Think about the relitigation problem.
Having the same argument 3 times because nobody remembers why we made the decision in the first place.
Exactly. In Roxy's world, the lineage of every choice is visible. You don't have to rebuild the context of why does the API look like this or who authorized this change. The conversation, the decision, the slice is sealed in the ledger.
It kills the ambiguity that causes organizational drag.
Yep. And that leads directly into the second point, operators. The people carrying the pagers.
The 3 a.m. panic scenario.
Usually when a system crashes, you are guessing. You're grepping through logs that might be incomplete because the server crashed before it could write them.
Or the logs are just noise.
But in the substrate, the ledger is external and permanent. You can replay the ledger.
Replay it, like a DVR.
Exactly like a DVR. You can go back to the exact timestamp before the failure and watch the sequence of slices play out.
Wow.
You can see the exact input that caused the cascade. It turns debugging from a murder mystery into a video analysis. You aren't guessing, you are witnessing.
That sounds like a dream. But let's talk about the third point, compliance. You mentioned earlier that audits are theater.
Yeah.
How does this change that?
Well, imagine an SOC2 audit. Usually it's a scramble. You're gathering screenshots, Excel sheets, trying to prove you followed process.
You're curating a story for the auditor?
Yes. Roxy argues that because the ChronoLedger is the audit trail and it's cryptographically sealed, compliance becomes a native state of the system.
You don't do an audit. You just give them the key to the ledger.
Here's the math. Verify it yourself. It turned compliance from a performance into a proof. It stops being something you do once a year and becomes something that is true every millisecond.
Okay. Now I want to circle back to the fourth point, which addresses my earlier fear. Psychological safety. You said earlier that having a permanent record of every mistake would actually make people less afraid. How does that logic work? Because if I knew my boss could see every syntax error I ever made, I'd freeze up.
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But think about why we are afraid to touch legacy code. We're afraid because we don't know what it does, and if we break it, we don't know if we can fix it.
We're paralyzed by the unknown.
We're afraid we can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Right.
Exactly. Roxy argues that the substrate eliminates the unknown. Because every action is recorded, and crucially, every state is recoverable via replay, you have a mathematical safety net.
Oh, okay.
You can take a risk, and if it blows up, you know exactly what happened and exactly how to return to the state before the explosion.
So the permanence of the record guarantees the recoverability of the system.
Exactly. It shifts the culture from don't touch anything, it's fragile, to build fearlessly because the truth is saved.
You can't truly break the universe. You can only add a new slice.
And if that slice is bad, you add another one to fix it.
That is a powerful reframing. It actually leads nicely into the final section of the manifesto, which is about the people.
They're very specific about who they want building this.
They are. And if you are tired of hearing job ads for ninjas and rock stars, this might be refreshing. They want invariant thinkers.
Invariant thinkers.
What is an invariant?
In math and computer science, an invariant is something that remains true regardless of transformations. They want people who focus on what cannot change.
People who look for the constants in a system rather than just shipping the next shiny feature?
Exactly. People who understand that constraints, like that 35 meters limit, are what make a system robust.
They also mention polyglot builders. But they clarify it's not about knowing 10 languages just to put them on your resume.
Right. It's not about syntax. It's about principles. They want people who are comfortable in Rust, Go, Node.js, because they understand the underlying structure of computing.
If you understand the physics of the substrate, the language is just a tool.
It's like a carpenter who can use any brand of hammer because they understand how to drive a nail.
And then there is the anti-interview. I think a lot of our listeners will appreciate this. We've all been there, standing at a whiteboard, sweating, trying to reverse a binary tree.
I have certainly been there, and Roxy says, no, none of that. They claim that kind of interview is just another form of theater.
So what do they do instead?
They give candidates 24 to 48 hours to just immerse themselves, read the Cosmos documentation, understand the physics, and then they ask them to work on real unsolved production problems.
Here's something that is actually broken. Fix it.
It's the ultimate test of observation creates reality. Can you observe the problem and create a slice that fixes it? It tests how you think, not how well you memorized algorithms.
It paints a picture of a company that is really trying to walk the walk. They aren't just selling a tool. They're trying to build a culture of invariant thinkers.
And that's the ultimate goal here. They are trying to move the industry away from fragile, forgetful systems where we accept digital decay as the cost of doing business.
They're saying no.
Roxy Systems is saying, no, code is a permanent mark on the universe. Treat it with that level of respect.
It's a shift from move fast and break things to move fast and seal the truth.
That is the perfect summary. It's about maturity. It's about realizing that software is the infrastructure of the world now, and we can't keep building it with duct tape and wishful thinking.
We have covered a lot of ground here. We looked at the trust crisis, the physics of the 35 meters coherence limit, the immutable ChronoLedger, and finally this concept of invariant thinkers.
It is a dense manifesto, but the takeaway is simple. We need to stop building on sand. We need a foundation, a substrate that respects the causality of our actions.
I want to leave you, the listener, with the philosophical flow that Roxy Systems uses to end their manifesto. It's a sequence that stuck with me. It goes, void leads to observation, which creates the Roxy identity, resulting in executable systems.
Void to systems. A reminder that software starts with nothing and only becomes something because we observe it and will it into existence.
So here is the question we want you to mull over today. If every digital action you took, every email you sent, every line of code you wrote was recorded as an immutable slice of reality visible forever, would you change the way you work?
It's a heavy question, but maybe that weight is exactly what our infrastructure has been missing.
A huge thank you to Roxy Systems for this fascinating deep dive into the substrate, and thank you for listening.
So witness.
So sealed. See you on the next deep dive.